Hello and welcome into the Sun Devil Source podcast presented by Jones Auto Centers and Jones Ford Verde Valley. I'm your host, Jacob Brooks, and as always, I'm joined by our publisher, Chris Cartman. Chris, how's it going today?
Short week, doing well. We got a lot of stuff to get to. I'm excited about this game. I think it's going to be the best game of ASU season to this point.
And I'm joined as well by Sun Devil Source staff writer Luke Lendler. He's been knee-deep in TCU analytics all week. Luke, how's it going?
It's going pretty well, Jacob. The vibes are high right now. I'm excited for this short week and to kind of see how it might affect my weekend schedule. Tons of other good college football on that I'm excited to watch.
Yeah, like you guys touched on, ASU has a big matchup upcoming Friday Night Lights against number 24 TCU. On this episode, we'll have everything that you all need to know in a breakdown. Later on in the episode, we'll be joined by Jeremy Clark from HornedFrogBlitz.com to give us a perspective from TCU's side of things. But before that, if you guys haven't heard, we will be having ASU football head coach Kenny Dillingham for a live Sun Devil Source podcast event at RAC Scottsdale this morning. Chris, can you give us more details on the VIP booth giveaway that we've got going on?
Yeah, super exciting. We've been working toward this. Looks like we have maybe 80-ish VIP, RSVPs to this point, mostly Sun Devil Source members, really fired up about that. People are going to be able to come down to RAC Scottsdale in the heart of Old Town Scottsdale. It's a great location. There's free parking in the back. It's a free entrance to come. Even if you're seeing this now for the first time, you can still show up. It's not going to be a problem. You're just not going to be able to get in on our raffle. The raffle is giving away a VIP booth that's going to be immediately adjacent to where I will be with Kenny Dillingham. We have him. He's going to be talking to us for about a half an hour in the 6 o'clock hour on Monday. We're going to probably start recording a little bit before then. People can start showing up. 5:30, no problem. Be a couple hours there until 7:30, I would say. This wouldn't be possible without our sponsors. You see them there on the screen: El Bandito, Yankee Tequila, Devil's Vodka, drinkonthesly.com. Again, RAC Scottsdale, as always, Jones Ford, Verde Valley, Jones Auto Centers. Super, super excited for this. Dillingham is going to be the first guest on our live podcast. And ASU fans, I know we're going to show up big. There's going to be a special raffle that we're going to have from a piece of art from Christopher Roche, ROCHE.com, ChristopherRocheArt.com. He's given away very generously a Camp Tonizona limited edition print that's been autographed by Kenny Dillingham. It's 22 by 22. This is a great piece to have in your home. This is a value on his website of $275. He's giving it away for free. And this is a great introduction into his artwork. He's going to be there and you're going to be able to see some of his stuff. I think rumor has it he's bringing a Cam Scadaboo print that people can check out. One of his more popular items you see behind me on our podcast every Thursday that I have Cam Scadaboo and Pat Tillman and Jake Plummer and Jalen Strong. And I have the original of the Camp Tonizona water tower, which is available for purchase if you go to his website. Again, Christopher Roche, ROCHEArt.com. And super excited to have Kenny Dillingham and see a whole bunch of Sun Devil Source members there at RAC Scottsdale. We'll have name tags. People can hang out and get to know one another or see people that they maybe haven't seen in a while and get a photo or something with me, Dillingham, whoever that you want. Maybe people want to hang out with you guys and get to know what it's like working for Sun Devil Source or covering ASU football. You guys will all be there. So super excited to be able to do this.
Yeah, Chris, I'm looking forward to the event as well. Like Chris was talking about, that'll be this Monday. Now that we've got the housekeeping out of the way, let's talk about the injury reports. As all of you guys listening or watching, wherever you're tuning in, probably know, with the new Big 12 conference rules, both teams have to provide a full injury report ahead of the matchup. So, Luke, what should fans be expecting to see from TCU's side in terms of injuries?
So there were a lot of names on TCU's. I did it just like you did, Jacob. There's a lot of names on TCU's injury report, but the most important one for ASU fans is the one at the top. Kavarian Barnes, you could say they're starting running back. They kind of split a lot of carries in the backfield. They've rotated who's been on the field for the first snap through a couple games so far. But Barnes is their leaders in yards and yards per carry. He's 3 carries shy of the next leader in carries. But he is a player to watch because he brings some thunder out of the backfield. He's a pretty powerful runner and is a big part of their kind of air raid hybrid offense that leans a lot more on the run game than you might expect from an air raid team. And his absence is pretty important because it could make the TCU offense a lot more one-dimensional than they might like, only because their reliance on this 3-headed dragon running back is a big part of what makes their scheme so dynamic. Also, the team leader in field goal attempts, Kyle Lamberman, is also out. He's missed a couple of games to this point. And TCU's backup kicker really doesn't have the range that their starter does, which has led to the offense being a lot more aggressive down in the red zone and the red area, which could actually be a pretty good thing for ASU's defense should it bend but not break. It doesn't run the risk of giving up 3 every time TCU gets inside the 40. It could still force some turnovers on 4th down and kind of just perhaps force turnovers that it might not otherwise have gotten.
Now, Chris, on ASU's side, we've touched on it with our coverage all week, but could you just reiterate what it's looking like on the injury front?
Yeah, the biggest continuing absences for ASU will be Xavier Alford at free safety, where Boogie Wilson played quite well last week. He's going to need to step up again. We'll see about Alford's status after the bye week, whether or not he's going to miss additional games. And then Jalen Moss, he hasn't played in a couple of weeks. ASU starting slot receiver to open the season. He's had injury and illness, eye infection. There's multiple things that have been going on with him per ASU, and that means that Derek Eusebio, who had a big late game performance on the road at Baylor, will get more opportunities in the slot. Also, Cyrus Fiaseu, ASU's number 3 linebacker, top backup linebacker, didn't practice Wednesday. He is listed as questionable. I'd kind of be surprised if he goes at this point. And Albert Smith, who's one of the team's better pass rushers, appeared to get hurt early on a kickoff. So that the pass rush on 3rd down could be impacted there. And then Rodney Bimage, ASU's top cornerback, also got dinged up in Wednesday's practice, and he went from not being on the injury report or the availability report to now being listed as probable. And so we'll have to see about his status.
All right, so now I want to get straight into TCU's offense. Luke, you've been doing research on them all week. What should fans expect from TCU's offense on Friday under the lights in Mountain America Stadium?
Well, I talked about it briefly on the Sun Devil Source podcast on Monday, and I just talked about it when I was addressing the injury report. But they have a very unique scheme. Their offensive coordinator is actually the son of former Baylor coach Art Briles, who was kind of ahead of his time in terms of the offensive schemes he brought to his program. It's Kendall Briles, the name of his son, and TCU's offensive coordinator. He's back for his 3rd year with the program. He took over right after the TCU made the national championship game. And they finished 10th in yards per game this first season. They dropped back a little bit last season, but once Josh Hoover, the quarterback, took over halfway through last season, the offense spiked up, hauled its ranking from the 40s to 26th nationally by the end of the season. And then so far this year, they're back in the top 10. They're averaging 529.5 yards per game, which is 9th in the country. And just like Baylor, their arch rival, TCU's offense is kind of air raidy in terms of its foundation and its concepts, but it's a lot less one-dimensional in terms of the way it employs the run game. They have 3 running backs that they like to lean on a lot. Like I mentioned, one of them, Kavarian Barnes, is out. So far, this is out for the game against ASU. But Jeremy Payne is a weapon out of the backfield who had 2 touchdowns against SMU and kind of brings a sort of Raleek Brown-esque dynamic to the backfield. He's not by no means the exact same player and as dynamic as Brown is, but he is a little bit on the smaller side, but kind of stocky for his height and is improved as a pass blocker in the offseason. So he's the kind of guy that hasn't been used on all 3 downs, but could surely step up into that role with Barnes out. Hoover is kind of the star of the show. Brian Ward called him the best quarterback they've seen yet in the Big 12, which we were talking about it at practice on Wednesday. To my mind, I was like, wow, that's crazy to say that. When you go through, you think about who they've played, and it kind of makes a lot of sense. Hoover's been very good this season. He's in the top 10 in yards per game. He's one of PFF's highest graded quarterbacks in the country. and he works the middle of the field like nobody else. Last season, when he took over, he had a 94.1 PFF grade on throws across the middle of the field. This year, his middle of the field PFF grade is again in the 90s, and particularly over the middle field. He loves to look for his big body receiver, Eric McAllister, who starts at Z for TCU. He works a lot on slant concepts and drag concepts. He is really the kind of guy that ASU's linebackers might need to have their head on a swivel for because of how often he finds the middle of the field. That's really where he does the most of his damage because he's bigger bodied and can kind of stand up to the physicality of the other team's linebackers. Now, he's sort of the thunder. I guess I've used that metaphor a couple times already, but he is somewhat the thunder. The lightning is Jordan Dwyer, a transfer from Idaho, who last season was Big Sky All-Conference second team. He's the second leading receiver on the team with 257 yards, and he is a dynamic weapon that they use across the formation. They use him on the outside just as much as they use him in the slot. You know, you don't often see somewhat undersized receivers playing the X role, but he does, and that gives you a sense for kind of how funky this offense might be with its play calling and how it is kind of shifting between air raid, but also they run the ball. It's just a very interesting scheme that you kind of have to see to believe. Chris and I were talking about this, that when you try to watch their film and try to get a sense of their tendencies, it's really hard to do that because they run so much different stuff. And how they use Dwyer is kind of the perfect example of that. They shift him all across the formation. He's very quick, shifty, and is the kind of guy that Hoover loves to rely on third downs when the somewhat elusive quarterback is pushed out of the pocket. Their offensive line is not bad per se, but is pretty thin and could potentially be hindered by an ASU pass rush that does a good job rotating and has a lot of fresh legs on the field a lot. That could tire TCU's offensive line out pretty quickly. At the end of the day, though, the offense is the engine of this team, a team that is starting the season 3-0, that is ranked, that by a lot of metrics is considered to be a very good football team. They have a strong head coach in Sonny Dykes, who has gone to a national championship before. It was somewhat of a Cinderella run. ASU DB coach Brian Carrington talked about that at practice on Wednesday. It was somewhat of a Cinderella run, but they still won a bunch of close games. They went all the way to the national championship, and Dykes was there for that. And this is a program that has really been built up after the strong years of Gary Patterson in the mid to late 2010s. They kind of fell on the wayside for a couple of years, but Dykes has really brought this program up. Briles is a very strong offensive coordinator that has worked under him now for multiple seasons, and Hoover is really the name to watch. I think he plays somewhat similarly to Sam Leavitt, though he is a little stockier and might be more of a run-first guy compared to Leavitt. But these two quarterbacks are both considered to be in the upper echelon of signal callers in the conference, and seeing them go basically head-to-head on Friday will be a very interesting matchup to watch.
I agree with pretty much all of that, except I would say that Hoover is not as much maybe run first as Leavitt. Very talented offense. This is better than any offense that ASU's played to this point in the season. Super hard to pin down what they're going to do tendency-wise, down distance situations. Watched all their games. Could not figure out what their game plan is going to be for ASU too closely. And that's something that coaches talked about a lot at ASU this week, just saying that you don't know exactly what it's going to be because they change from week to week. I think their offensive line is athletic and mobile. They run a lot of gap scheme. They get those guys moving on pulls and get them outside. And even though they don't have Barnes, their top running back, I still think they're going to be relatively committed to trying to run the football effectively. And their receivers, as you did a good job at illustrating, Luke, they're super talented. Their top two guys, McAllister, Dwyer, they'll get those guys on routes all over the place. Kind of hard to figure out. Hoover is a really great pocket progression, quick processing type of a quarterback. He's able to get his head around to know where he wants to go with the football. And that balancing of what they're able to do with their rushing attack and how they use every blade of grass in the passing game from sideline to sideline, across the middle, outside the numbers. They create a lot of problems. ASU is going to have a lot of challenge on its hands, as we're going to get into.
Yeah, as you talked about, Chris, ASU's defense is going to be without Xavier Alford again. It's all conference safety, and that's a big deal against the offense with this much firepower. Luke, I'm going to throw back over to you first. Like you talked about, Brian Ward and Kenny Dillingham have both touched on the difficulties that is facing against Josh Hoover. What will you expect from ASU's defense on Friday?
ASU's defense is a kind of unit that has been very adaptive to who it's playing against so far this season. We saw against Baylor, they ran a lot more man coverage than they had in previous games. Carrington talked about that. He said they really like to take their matchups week by week. So for a guy like Hoover, it's tough. You kind of have to pick your poison. He is mobile enough to where he will punish you if you sit in man coverage and you don't have a spy on him. But his receivers are talented enough, and especially McAllister is good enough to find soft areas in zones, again, particularly over the middle of the field, that can lead to a chain of maybe technically explosives, but plays that don't go for 20 yards, but 12, 15, 12, 17. Like that is the kind of offense that TCU has put up. And it's the reason it had such strong performances against P4 defenses in UNC, which is, by the way, coached by Bill Belichick. That guy's not a defensive idiot. He has years and years under his belt of how to coach a good defense, and TCU picked them apart in the first game Belichick coached in college. So this is an offense that I'm expecting ASU to probably try to throw as many looks at as possible. And again, force TCU to be as one-dimensional as possible. That means probably allocating more resources either towards the run, toward the pass, depending on what ASU thinks it has the best shot to defend.
Yeah, look, I think North Carolina is borderline terrible right now, but the performance against SMU, Hoover, I think, had 5 touchdown passes in the game. Mm-hmm. That was extremely impressive to me, because even though SMU is not nearly as good as it was last year, probably still a formidable type of an opponent, to be putting up that sort of a production early on in the season and have that caliber of execution in their passing attack. And just the way that they go about it is extremely difficult. I think if you're ASU, what you have to do is you have to commit more to the box and be willing to play more man coverages, even though McAllister and Dwyer have more vertical capability than the receivers that ASU played against Baylor. You're going to see Keith Abney. He's going to have a great game. Javen Robinson's going to have to play well, or whoever is at corner. And you can't give up anything over the middle of the field with Boogie Wilson. I'm highly confident that they're going to try with twins into the boundary or flood concepts into the boundary. They're going to try to get Miles Rouser into some conflict situations, and they're going to try to get Kendrick Breedlove into some conflict situations. Those guys are going to be super important to watch again in this game in terms of how they handle those assignments. But ASU has to stop the run early at the point of attack and try to make TCU much more pass heavy. Hoover is going to have to throw the ball a lot. He's very accurate, difficult to deal with. Secondary pass rush is going to have to be good. You can get in there on TCU's offensive linemen, because even though they're athletic, they're not big. They're not going to hold up for a long time, I don't think. And big boy football game. I mean, you got to win at the line of scrimmage, and you got to try to force some turnovers, because ASU, both of these teams, are plus in their turnover margin by a lot. TCU's won every game in turnover margin. ASU has to get some passes deflected, take some away from Josh Hoover. And yes, Luke, he scrambles quite well on third downs, fourth down situations. They'll also do it by design on quarterback runs.
All right, now that we have one side of this matchup out of the way with TCU's offense and ASU's defense, we'll be right back with our breakdown of ASU's offense and TCU's defense after a word from our primary sponsor, Jones Auto Centers.
For over 60 years, the Glenn Jones name has been recognized for integrity and honesty.
And the Jones Auto Centers in Wickenburg.
Jones Ford Verde Valley.
Take a nice country drive out to Buckeye.
When you're talking about Arizona's best, you're talking about the Jones Auto Group. It's quick, fast, strong.
I want to invite you to visit our new facility in Casa Grande and enjoy our country-style way of doing business. We're the Joneses.
Welcome back to the Sun Devil Source podcast presented by Jones Auto Centers. Whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you're at, be sure to check out the description of this podcast, because you can contact Parker Jones directly through phone or email if you are interested in buying a new or used vehicle from one of Jones Auto Centers' many dealerships around the valley. Parker Jones and Jones Verde Valley have been huge supporters of ASU's NIL efforts over the past few years, so we're proud to have them as our sponsors, and that's another great reason to make them your go-to if you live in the valley and you need a new or used vehicle. All right, guys, let's just get straight into it. Luke, I'm going to toss to you TCU's defense. What should fans expect during the blackout game this Friday?
This is a unit that is average across the board, except in the safety department. I mean, talked about ASU missing a guy in Xavier Alford. TCU could really not afford to miss their safeties. They have two guys that are really strong. One of them, Bud Clark, came into this season on a lot of NFL radars. This was a guy that pro scouts were looking at, thinking could be a top 60 pick. He's hasn't had the strongest start to the season, but he's still a very, very good tackler and is not somebody that you can easily punish in the pass game. He's a sound defender, high football IQ, chops his feet. Jamel Johnson has been the leader of this defense, though, in basically every statistical category. He has the most interceptions with 2. He has the most tackles with 20. He's their highest graded PFF player. He's their highest graded tackler. I mean, I could go on. And again, this duo are two guys that patrol the field very, very well. This is a unit that runs either 3-3-5 or 4-2-5. It has a little bit of kind of hybrid to it in terms of how many down linemen they might throw down. Interestingly, that down lineman number has really not resulted in this team piling up many sacks. That's probably one of the areas they could maybe desire some improvement in as the season goes on. But that back end, those 5 DBs, and particularly the 2 safeties and, the other nickelback or safety that will rotate with them, has been a primary reason for this unit not losing the takeaway battle yet this season. Chris talked about it earlier. They find a way to pick off decent quarterbacks and decent offenses. Chris talked about SMU. I mean, Jennings, the quarterback of SMU, was no slouch. He could have gone to the pros last year. Would he have been a draft pick? We're not sure, but he was a pretty good college quarterback last season and a guy that was a big deal that he was coming back. And he still turned the ball over a handful of times against TCU because of the chaos this defense might be able to generate. While it's not incredible in terms of its statistical prowess or its advanced analytics, it still finds the way to get the job done in a lot of categories. And particularly with those 2 safeties in the back end, those are the guys that ASU is really going to have to watch and potentially game plan around for the game on Friday.
They have a heavy 3-man front. They do a really good job with their down lineman. Marcus Deal is a nose tackle, 330, 340 pounds, big, strong, physical guy. A lot of the air raid style offenses, they aren't that physical at the point of attack with their defensive fronts. TCU has done a good job stopping the run. They play their 4th player that Luke's talking about is like a hybrid end linebacker, often aligned into the boundary, sometimes on the field side. They bring a lot of pressures, and they do it in a variety of ways, where they have guys. They'll change the alignments of their down linemen to being a lot more wide split, or there'll be tight splits. They figure out ways to creatively rush linebackers, safeties, corners, nickels from everywhere. They pair a lot of it with 2 of those guys coming along with three down linemen. They don't have particularly dynamic edge players or like the twitchier pass rushers, so they have to manufacture it with their scheme, and they play a lot of man coverage behind it. I totally agree with Luke. Their safeties are excellent. That is the strength of their group. They're 2 of their top tacklers. Bud Clark is a really great player. And I feel like their corners are probably where they're a little bit more vulnerable. I noticed, watching some of these games that they've played to this point, Vernon Glover is a corner who missed last season or most of last season due to injury. He hasn't been quite as sticky in coverage to this point in the season. And then really their other corners are also not great. So there's opportunities that teams are going to have, but they put quarterbacks into conflict situations, and they make it hard to diagnose who's coming from where. There are though opportunities for their blitzers to kind of be learned pre-snap, because they don't really disguise it that well. They get those guys kind of moving before the snap, which then allows for opponents to be able to make checks and adjust to their secondary play or their hot route types of concepts. And that is a contributing factor in what has enabled TCU to maybe give up more explosives than it would prefer in the passing attack.
So for ASU's offense to match up against this defense, I think most Sun Devil fans would agree that it wasn't a perfect day at the office for ASU's offense against Baylor. They had to settle for 4 field goals with Jesus Gomez. Gomez delivering was what helped get ASU the win. But Luke, what do you think ASU's offense is going to have to do against this TCU defense to try and be a little bit more successful in the red zone and just overall on Friday?
Well, they're going to ask Levitt to process at a rate that he might not have displayed the ability to process at a lot so far this season. They are going to be disciplined enough to do, in my opinion, what they've shown on film so far is a good job taking away the other quarterback's first read. They get hurt when the offensive line of the team they're playing against can buy the quarterback enough time where he can progress to his second and third read, and that's the read that does a lot of damage. So for ASU to find a lot of offensive success against the Horned Frogs on Friday, it's going to fall on Levitt being able to process from his first read to his second read to his third read and really spread the ball around. At the same time, there's nobody in TCU's cornerback room that can really step to Jordan Tyson in terms of talent. So we could see that first read just being open because this is the best receiver TCU has faced yet this season. And probably a pretty good chance the best receiver they will face all season. So it'll be interesting to see how Dillingham and Arroyo potentially scheme Tyson open against a unit that is often so dedicated to taking away their first read. TCU's odd/even front has done a pretty good job against the run so far this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if ASU tries to stick to its run-first identity early and often in this game. More so to open up Levitt having a strong fourth quarter like he did last week, open up those play-action shots and make communication and maybe take away the habit of communication from TCU secondary. Make communication rare. Ask them to communicate in the big moments. Ask them to communicate on the 3rd and 8s and the 3rd and 9s in the fourth quarter. There we might see a bust just like Baylor did that broke Derek Eusebio wide open on that 3rd and 13. When you don't throw it every play, suddenly every possession becomes so much more valuable for the defense in terms of how they communicate and how they navigate and avoid disaster. So for ASU to stick to its run first mindset in the first half could do very well for the team's offense in the second half. And I think everybody agrees that this is a game that will go to the fourth quarter. This will not be a blowout at halftime by any stretch of the imagination. So for ASU to play this game across 4 quarters and not think about throwing all its cards on the table in the first half could go a long way. This is a unit that, like I mentioned, talent across the board in some spots, weaknesses other places, not necessarily spectacular in any statistic. And so for ASU, it might just be a matter of executing its offensive plan. They won't be able to do whatever they want, but it will still allow them to run a variety of concepts and execute what's working.
I think ASU needs to broaden out its run game approach. You're not going to be able to run as much into the teeth of this TCU defense. It's going to be good for ASU to get Kyson Brown back healthier. He played limited reps last week. Raleek Brown is talented, explosive. I don't think he's a guy who is best served by 20 carries, though. He's probably a 10, 12, maybe 15 carry guy. Kyson Brown is going to help him take some of that load off and the pressure and get some different options and fresher guys out there. You're going to have to capture the edge against this team. Maybe some gap scheme runs where you get guys pulling and moving. Your HG counter type stuff where you're able to maybe you get some jet sweeps. You get Eusebio into the game to where you can run, try to access the perimeter in your run game. That you have to be able to be successful blocking on the perimeter. Hines Ward talked a lot about this week. Kenny Dillingham talked about it also about the blocking not being as good this year with Melquan Stovall and Xavier Guillory being out there. You need to be able to get these other guys, Malik McClain, your tight ends, Jaron Hamilton, even Jordan Tyson. These guys got to be better blockers to take the pressure off of Sam Levitt. And then Sam Levitt's going to have to be able to diagnose, okay, where's this blitz coming from? Pre-snap. What does that mean? Where do I need to go with the football in order to get the ball out quickly? I don't think that you can just rely on your ability to run all the time, even though we know that's a good aspect to his game when he's 100% healthy. But don't overly rely on that. And Jordan Tyson is going to be able to take advantage of these corners. I also think you're going to get some shot play opportunities. They haven't connected on enough of their shot plays due to a protection breakdown, due to a penalty, due to a ball not being placed as well, or maybe the receiving target just can't quite come up with it. They have to fix those little tiny things and hit more of these shot plays again, especially against a TCU, a team that has enough explosiveness on its own offensive side that the Sun Devils aren't going to be able to just play ball control, possession, try to run it. This isn't a game for that. You got to be a lot more explosive and a lot more capable of executing what you're trying to do offensively.
So, Chris, you talked about ASU's offense and the run game. Raleek Brown right now is second in the Big 12 in rushing yards and currently one of the top tackle breakers in the country per PFF. I was actually able to catch up with him after practice in a sit-down recently to talk to him about his breakout season and his journey to get to this moment. Raleek Brown is off to a scorching start to the 2025 season.
Raleek Brown through the hole. Brown hurdles, and Brown still going.
The redshirt junior running back is second in the Big 12 with 372 rushing yards on a whopping 6.6 yards per carry.
Raleek Brown gone. 75 to the house.
This level of success isn't a shock to Brown, but instead the fulfillment of goals he always expected to achieve.
It ain't really like a surprise to me, because for me, I feel like I should have been doing all this. And it's just a start, and I just gotta keep going, keep working.
But Brown had to overcome a lot of adversity to get to this moment, spending virtually 2 straight seasons on the sideline. Brown's unorthodox college career began at USC, where he came in as a highly touted 4-star running back. However, after an injury-riddled 2023, dark clouds surrounded his role within the Trojan offense, so Brown set his sights on the transfer portal and decided upon ASU.
Why do you think things didn't work out at USC?
I would never know why didn't things work out at SC, but that's just what it is.
You know, I think that, he was playing more of the slot back type, and he wanted to play that running back. We had a vision of how our backs, especially the past couple of years, and he fit that fit that we want.
Despite arriving in Tempe ready to hit the ground running in 2024, disaster struck for Brown right at the outset of preseason camp.
Second day of fall camp, I tore my hamstring, so that's what happened. I was disappointed because I wanted to play. But I just kept pushing those, just kept going, just thinking about the next thing, just getting healthy.
Brown would have to use a medical redshirt year and watch ASU's Cinderella run to the college football playoff from the sidelines. Not being on the field for that storied season gave him all the fuel he needed heading into 2025 as he put on 15 pounds in the offseason.
Well, I set out 2 seasons. Basically, so I've been real hungry to get back playing football.
I think he was just so hurt from same boat I was in. Just not being able to play, seeing all these bros play, seeing us lose in the college football playoffs. You just develop this hunger of just wanting to come back better than ever, I feel like, and that's what he did.
Despite the work that Brown was putting in, he still flew under the radar for many fans due to the bumps in the road of his college journey.
Where he was working back and nobody really knew about him. Everybody forgets about you when you transfer somewhere and don't play for a year because you're not a new transfer. You're just a guy on the roster now. And he put in the work, and that work is showing up. And I think when you're in those situations and you're hurt for a year and you're at a new place, you kind of get lost a little bit, and you got to figure out yourself how to motivate yourself to work, and you're hungry to play again.
While many athletes wouldn't have thrived after facing such adversity, Brown may have actually benefited from it. At least according to his father, Roscoe.
And I really believe as a father, he needed this adversity to grow as an athlete and grow off the field. A lot of people would have quit, you know what I'm saying? I just think it helped him mature mentally, man. I really honestly believe that Raleek needed this.
Making sure he goes and gets treatments. Now he's the older back, right? I got to come in early. I got to roll out. I got to do all those things. And then from a mental standpoint, he prepares a lot more this year. Of course, when you're hurt, it's hard to prepare for something now. But he's put a lot of time in the off season learning the playbook, knowing all the nuances. And so I think he's done an incredible job getting prepared for this season.
And the biggest key to making it through all that adversity was that Raleek Brown's self-confidence that never, ever wavered.
With everything that you went through, what does it mean to you to really be making an excellent impact on the field this season?
I mean a lot. Like, just to do it, it just felt good. Like I say, I feel like I should have been doing all this, but it just felt good to see it coming to light.
Man, my son inspired me a lot, man. I teach him, he teach me. You know what I'm saying? We've been doing this since he was at 4 years old, man. So he ain't played in a football game in like 2 seasons. So he showed me that, like, if he could do it, I could do it. You know what I'm saying? That's inspiration for me as well as a father.
In Tempe, Jacob Brooks, Sun Devil Source. All right, Chris. Well, on the topic of Raleek Brown, as you mentioned earlier, Kyson Brown is going to be coming back in this game, and Kenny Dillingham said that he's going to kind of take the leash off a little bit with Kyson because he's another week removed from injury. He's wasn't able to fully go through the practice process ahead of last week's game. This week he was able to. What do you expect from him and Raleek in the running game this week?
What can Brown do for you? This is a game where those guys are going to have to be hitting on some big plays, not just in the run game, but also in the screen game, or get them matched up on a linebacker, take advantage of renewed emphasis on blocking. But I think for Raleek Brown, he was so good early on in the season at attacking those gaps when they're there. I think he became a little bit too patient and hesitant as a runner, perhaps, and a little bit too interested in trying to spill the ball outside, get your shoulders turned. You don't want to do that. Got to be able to hit those holes downhill. He's shown he's heavier, stronger, better at breaking tackles. Take advantage of those things in this game.
So we'll be right back with an interview that Chris did with Jeremy Clark from HornedFrogBlitz.com to get his TCU perspective on this upcoming matchup after a word from one of our sponsors, DrinkOnTheSlide.com.
Okay, we're back on the Sun Devil Source podcast, presented by Jones Auto Centers, joined now by Jeremy Clark, Horned Frog Blitz for 247sports.com. Jeremy, how you doing today?
Doing great, man. Looking forward to a big game on Friday night.
Yeah, we're really excited to talk to you about that. So what's been your thoughts about TCU through the non-conference and anything surprised you or that you've been impressed by in particular?
Well, I was hoping they were going to be 3-0 going into Tempe. The schedule, worked out good for them. The North Carolina game, you had a lot of question marks heading into it. There was a lot of hype behind that game. Bill Belichick coaching his first college game. So you had a huge crowd out there, and it was good to see TCU kind of overcome a slow start. They let North Carolina score the very first drive, but other than that, TCU pretty much dominated the game. And you go, you win on the road like that, and you have to sit at home the next week. It was a weird scheduling thing. They had a bye week the next week, so you had to have the bye week, play a FCS opponent in Abilene Christian, got out 42-9, put the backups in. It ended up being 42-21, so everyone was kind of questioning. There were some plays on the defense that just kind of had you scratching your head a little bit, wondering if they were really into the game. But last week against SMU, it was kind of one of those games I looked at early that could be a measuring stick game for TCU just to kind of see where they are. SMU, they went to the playoffs last year. They're not the same team they were in 2024, but they're still a very loaded roster. Kevin Jennings is still regarded as one of the better quarterbacks, not only in the ACC, but I think he kind of gets a little bit of national notoriety as well, just for his elusiveness. And SMU's, they're big, man. They're big, fast, and athletic. They have strong offensive line, good defensive line. Secondary was kind of questionable, but I looked at the TCU game. Obviously, they had a big fourth quarter from Josh Hoover and Eric McAllister, but for them to get out with a 35-24 win, which could have been maybe a little worse. Eric had a touchdown stolen from them, and then they also had a touchdown that was easily a touchdown that was never reviewed, and they didn't get to add that one on the board. So 3-0 is basically where I expected them to play, and it's going to be tough this Friday, though. This is by far, Arizona State's by far, both sides of the ball, the best team they'll face so far early in the schedule.
Yeah. So when you were entering the season, like, what did you think would be the strengths of TCU and the weaknesses? And then how has that compared to what you've seen so far?
Well, just starting with the strengths, I figured Josh Hoover was going to have another big year. I mean, he set the TCU single season record last year for passing yards, so I figured he's going to be good. He's a pretty accurate thrower. Was kind of a little off last week against SMU, threw some high passes, but ended up hitting on some critical passes late in the game with pinpoint accuracy. That's one thing that he's always had is his accuracy. But another strength is the offensive line. They kind of didn't really mesh well last year. They've showed improvement this year. The defensive line was another deep group that I figured that was going to be productive. Marcus Dill coming back, adding Ansel Denbua from Washington State. The linebacker core is really, really strong, very experienced with Nnamdi Obiazor and Caleb Elarm-Zor. And really the defense secondary, I mean, there's still a little question mark at corner, but Channing Canada is kind of a veteran. He's got a lot of starts under his belt. But Bud Clark, just looking at safety, Bud Clark is the unquestioned leader of this defense. He makes plays. He'll give up some plays every now and then, but he's still regarded as one of the top safeties in the Big 12 and obviously the nation. But one area of improvement that I've really liked so far, Chris, is the run game. Last year, they averaged 113 yards per game. It was abysmal. Had to move Savion Williams over from wide receiver to get some running yards with him at running back. But they've proved that they can run the ball this year. Kavorian Barnes, he's not going to play against Arizona State. He had 115 yards against North Carolina, got injured against Abilene Christian. So we were kind of wondering, how's the run game going to be against SMU? Because SMU typically has a pretty good run defense. And Trent Battle went out there, had 60 yards on 7 carries. Jeremy Payne showed some things, running the football, catching the football. They still have Nate Palmer, John Denman, a true freshman that's really talented. So I feel like they're running the ball well. And lastly, Chris, just the biggest question mark was, how are you going to replace Jack Besh, Savion Williams? And both those guys, Jack was a 2nd-round pick, Savion 3rd-round pick. And then J.P. Richardson landed on the Chicago Bears practice squad. So you have 3 guys in the NFL that are gone. So the receivers they brought in, Jordan Dwyer, Joseph Manjack, and then they had Eric McAllister returning, and everyone saw how he played last week. But all 3 of those guys have each had a 100-yard game this season. So one area of concern that I had coming into the season, they're obviously passing right now.
Mm-hmm. So you don't really see too many vulnerabilities right now on either side of the ball for TCU.
I do. Just going back to that secondary, the secondary has I don't want to say they're playing bad. They're not playing great. They do have an ability of giving up deep passes, especially against Abilene Christian. They gave up a few long ones. So obviously facing a guy as talented as Jordan Tyson is going to be a huge challenge for them. I don't know how they're going to game plan for them, if they're going to put Channing Canada on them, if they're going to put Vernon Glover on them. They do kind of have a 3 to 4 man rotation at cornerback right now. So you're going to see some multiplicity out there. You're going to see some different packages with them trying to, shut out Tyson as best they can. But the thing that I think most is just containing Sam. Sam can make plays with his legs. And Kevin, they held him, Jennings, to 13 yards last week, but he was able to escape and make some plays and really had some miraculous throws that went for touchdowns. So I kind of look at Sam Levitt in that same regard. He's going to make plays with his feet, but he's a lot faster than Jennings. So you've got a game plan around him and be able to contain that guy.
Well, so how much of the big plays that have been given up are the product of a risk reward aspect with Andy Avalos and what he does defensively?
Well, just looking at those big plays late in the second half against Abilene Christian, some of it had to do with just dialing it back, really no pressure because Andy's known to blitz and really blitz from all angles. Right. So there really wasn't a lot of pressure for some of these guys, and some of those passes, and any coach you talk to, especially a secondary coach and cornerbacks coach, it's really hard for a cornerback to come back and play an underthrown ball. And in those cases, the deep passes they were letting get completed, they were underthrown balls where the receiver had worked back and just had better leverage than the defensive back of TCU. So if they fixed that last week, they only gave up one big play over the top. Guy did a little hitch and go move on them. So they do have a tendency to bite at those a little bit. But based on going from Abilene Christian to SMU, they did show improvement with giving up the big play.
But they've done quite well against the run, it seems like. Is this like a very physical, stout team up front, or assignment sound, or how would you describe it?
One thing I'll say about the defensive line is they're big and they're strong and they're athletic. If you just look at the interior, Marcus Dill is a 6'5", 320-pound defensive nose tackle. Ansel Denbua is not quite as big. He's not small. He's 6'2", 300 range. But what I like about Denzel is he's really quick off his first step. He's got great explosion, and he's a guy that's not going to rack up the stats in the stat column. He'll take on double teams. But Zach Chapman didn't play last week against SMU. He was injured. He's back this week. He beat out Paul Oyewale. But what's interesting about those two, they both play edge, and they only play about 2 snaps apiece before they rotate in and out. So they're extremely fresh every time they come in there. So Paul missed all of 2024. I think he has 1 sack already this year. He's big and physical, 6'4", 270. But the thing I think is making TCU's defensive line so successful right now is just the depth, because they have a constant rotation. They have interior guys that come in, Tristan Johnson, Connor Lindgren. Connor's another big nose tackle. He's another 6'5", 315 type defensive lineman. He'll take on the double teams and create space for the linebackers to make plays. But yeah, I just looking at what they've been able to do through the first 3 games, I think it is just multiplying everything, just from just a physical standpoint, schematic standpoint, and just having fresh legs and just having depth there at that position group.
So do you think against a team like ASU, which has done well against the run generally, that not having Barnes will make TCU a little bit less balanced with its attack? And what are the attributes that make Hoover so good?
Well, starting with the run game, without Barnes, I mean, we saw a little bit of what life is like without Barnes last week. What's funny about Barnes, and TCU was kind of taking in the shorts over the summer for not really going out and trying to get a big name running back, because Barnes, I mean, he had some injury issues at UTSA, had a huge freshman year, and then he gets injured. And TCU, he was kind of a guy that didn't have a lot of stats last 2 years, and then he got to TCU and just set the world on fire. I mean, was making plays in spring camp, fall camp, and then obviously had the big game against North Carolina. So everyone against SMU was like, how are we going to win without Barnes? How's that run game going to be? But Trent Battle is a 5th-year senior. I really honestly feel like he should get more carries. He's a bigger back, played on that 2022 team that made it to the national championship. So he's been around a long time, and he can make some plays. He's smart, very, very smart back, good pass protector. But if they're going to distribute the runs like I feel like they are, I feel like it's still going to be Jeremy Payne getting a bulk of the carries, Trent Battle getting some carries, and then finishing out with Nate Palmer and John Dimon. I don't have a guess of the carry distribution, but I feel like all 4 of those guys are going to carry the ball at some point. But Josh, this is what we all said last year about Josh, Chris, is he didn't have a run game to support him. And he went out there. They had to rely on the pass. Now you have a run game that's kind of helping him out a little bit, and it's made him flourish a little bit better. Teams don't get to focus so much on just stopping TCU's passing game. So it's opened up some things in the run game. You'll see them get stuffed a couple times, 2 or 3 times, and all of a sudden they'll break one open because it's Josh's passes have loosened up the defense, and it allows them to create some good run lanes. But I'll tell you one thing about Kendall Briles. Everyone thinks of air raid and they just want to throw the ball. Josh Hoover just wants to throw the ball. Kendall Briles is a run first to set up the pass offensive coordinator. When he was with his dad at Baylor, that's how they were. All those Baylor offenses back in 2014 through 2016 were run heavy teams that just had extremely fast vertical threats, and everyone thought, hey man, this is just a passing offense. Well, no, they're trying to create a balance, and that's what Kendall's really trying to do with TCU's offense. But when you have a guy that's as talented as Josh, he's starting to get some Heisman recognitions through some Vegas odds makers, and he really has all the intangibles you look for in a quarterback. And he studies film. His teammates love him. I told someone the other day, his teammates love him from the quarterback room all the way down to the third string kicker. I've never seen a team just be so drawn toward a leader like they are for Josh Hoover. But he's playing on another level right now. And one thing that I will say that's made him better than years past is Josh is starting to run now. Now, he's no Sam Levitt, okay? I'm not going to go crazy here and say that. But Josh has been able to extend plays with his feet. We're starting to see a little bit more quarterback draws drawn up for him now because he is faster. He's probably a 4.7, 4.8 type kid, but he's fast enough to escape pressure, throw on the run. If you go back and watch that SMU game, he had several plays that he was making with his feet, including they had a 2nd and 20 situation. He got 13 yards and then ran a draw, got a first down run, and then a few plays later, he's running for his life, and he throws up a perfect pass to Eric McAllister for a touchdown. So that's the ability that he's brought into his game this year. Now that he's a junior, and that's made him a lot more. It's a lot tougher for defensive coordinators to plan against.
And you mentioned McAllister. I mean, he seems like he's a deep ball threat on any snap. And then Dwyer's shifty, leverage, move him around type of a guy. Is that accurate? How would you describe the way that they like to get the ball to those guys?
Well, starting with Jordan. Jordan was kind of the guy that came in spring and really fall camp and kind of became that, take the top off defense guy. They like speed at the X position, and he's obviously not as big as Eric, but he is really good at creating separation. He had a huge game against North Carolina in the opener, had some good catches against Abilene Christian. Wasn't as active last week against SMU, but when you have a guy like McAllister in the zone that he was in, you're gonna throw to him as much as you can. But Eric's one of those guys. He's a big frame kid. He'll drop an occasional pass, but he's really consistent when it comes to 50-50 passes. He's got strong hands. And one thing I'll say about Eric is he breaks tackles. And you just go back and watch the film on SMU. He breaks tackles, but everyone's going to watch that SMU game. What I tell people is go back and watch last year. Watch Texas Tech. TCU's losing. Josh throws a back shoulder fade. He catches it, breaks tackle, and runs 70-something yards for a touchdown. Did the same thing against Kansas. So it's no surprise to us that have kind of been watching Eric. Eric's from my same hometown, little bitty town northwest of Fort Worth called Hazel. And so I've seen Eric make those type of plays since he was a sophomore in high school. He always has a tendency to break tackles, and he's not going to go out and run a 4.3, 4.4 at the combine. But I'll say this about Eric. When he breaks away, I've never seen him get caught from behind, and really no one has. He's just got extremely deceptive speed. So that's one thing that I would say if they kind of get up in his grill a little bit and try to press him, he is a very physical kid. And I can't wait to watch that matchup between him and Keith, because Keith was one of those kids that I thought, man, TCU needs to get on this kid. He's a Waxahachie kid. And there's a couple guys on Arizona State's roster, Keith and CJ Fight. CJ Fight's out of tiny Tatum, Texas. And that was another defensive lineman. I was like, man, that kid should have stayed. I wish he would have had a chance to stay close to home, but they got some good defenders, and especially Keith. That's going to be a fun matchup to watch with him and Eric.
So in our Q&A exchange, you picked TCU to win 27-21, I believe. Just really quickly, what would be your top 3 or 4 keys to making that happen before we get out of here?
Well, they've been battle tested. I think I said that in my answers. They went to a hostile environment. They kind of bring their own energy. I know the environment and atmosphere is going to be really loud at Arizona State, but they've been in those situations before. So I think the offense just has to keep doing what they've done, Chris. They got to get out, score early, don't get down by two touchdowns. They need to be the first one to score. Obviously, they don't need to turn the ball over. They've done a really good job. Josh has 2 interceptions this year, but both of those interceptions, one against North Carolina was off his own receiver's hands that was tipped in the air. And then last week against SMU, the defensive back stole the ball out of Eric's hands when he was going down for the touchdown catch. So you can't really put those on Josh Hoover, but they've got to eliminate turnovers. They can't give the ball to Arizona State. And defensively, man, they have got to stop the run. I mean, they've got, first and foremost, you got to contain Sam. He hasn't had a lot of passing yards, and I don't know whether – I haven't watched Arizona State's, whole schedule, but I know Sam doesn't have a lot of passing yards right now, and I know there hasn't really been a receiver to step up other than Jordan Tyson. So if they can take Jordan out, kind of like they let T-Mac have his catches last year with Arizona, and they held Arizona with their athletic quarterback. They still held them to a low scoring output. So if they can get Tyson limited, not let him jump 45 inches in the air like he did against Baylor for that late touchdown, and have those kind of grabs, I think they stand a really good chance, because until I see someone else, and maybe you agree, until I see someone else at receiver for Arizona State kind of step up, that's going to be, TCU's objective, is shutting out Jordan Tyson, containing Sam Levitt, and hopefully contain Raleek Brown, because there's not a defensive back or player in TCU's defense that can run that kid down. So do those things. It's going to be close. I mean, I predict TCU to win just because I feel like they're playing at a very high level right now. And I feel like they've been battle tested in those type of environments. But this game could go either way. I mean, it's one of those games that's going to be fun to watch. And maybe the last one that has the ball is going to win. I'll tell you this: if it comes down to field goals, Arizona State's winning this game. It's not even. You guys got Jesus.
TCU's kicker is out, right? TCU started kicking.
Yeah. So their backup, Nate McCashlin, great kid, has been nails on extra points. And when you have a backup kicker, those become issues. Can this kid even make an extra point? But right now, if this game's going down to the final drive and TCU has the ball and it's a tie game, they're going to have to get in within the 20 for the guy to legitimately have a chance. His range is kind of 42 to 47 yards, and I would really be pushing that 47-yard range. So if it comes down to the kickers and kickers making it, I'd have to give the edge to Arizona State right now, just because you guys got a really good one.
Well, I think that's probably going to be one of the keys to the game. It's converting those opportunities and drives into touchdowns, right? And red zone defense, I think, is going to be a big factor in this one. So, well, Jeremy Clark, Horned Frog, appreciate it. HornedFrogBlitz.com, 24/7 Sports. Really looking forward to this game Friday night. Everybody's going to be watching.
Thank you again to Jeremy Clark for your time and your insight on TCU's perspective. But now we have a part of this episode that I've really been looking forward to. It is time to do our raffle for the VIP booth for our Kenny Dillingham live Sun Devil Source podcast event. Our staff writer right here, Luke Lendler, is going to pick a number between 1 and 45 to see which of the 45 parties that we currently have registered right now will win the VIP booth. Chris and Luke, take it away.
Luke, I'm very curious about this, about how you're picking this number here.
I think, to me, the second you told me I was picking a number, I knew exactly what number I was going for. I wore this number to play high school basketball for my senior year. This number is my initials. If you look at it a certain way, I'm picking number 11, LL11, picking number 11.
All right, Chris, who is that?
11 is Matt Blakely, who's bringing Owen Blakely and Henry Blakely. So that's a great trio of Sun Devil Source members, subscribers. They express a lot of excitement at being able to come out to Rack Scottsdale and take part in this. And we are super excited. They're going to be able to get not only a VIP booth with food and beverage totaling $100 or more, but also they're going to be able to get a bottle of El Bandito Yankee tequila, and they're going to be able to get a bottle of Devil's Vodka and some drinkontheslide.com. And then for people who are still interested in trying to win something else who are going to be there, we're going to still have some additional goodies headlined by that Camp Tonazona print that's going to be signed by Kenny Dillingham. That's worth $275, I think. Pretty great prize there. People can check it out on ChristopherRoachArt.com. We're going to have stuff, goodies that are also provided by Parker Jones with Jones Auto Centers, Jones Ford, Verde Valley. So super excited. Congrats to Matt Blakely and your party. We're super happy that you're going to be able to get this this VIP suite.
All right, guys. Now let's get to the part of the episode that everybody came here for. Our keys to the game and our official prediction. No wasted time. Luke, let's get right into it.
So this is a game where at the start of the week, when I just thought about the win that ASU was coming off of and the fact that TCU had already had a bye and might have been thrown off a little bit, I confidently was thinking ASU could win this game by double digits. But then I watched the film. I heard what everybody had to say about Josh Hoover. And I'm still going to pick an ASU win, but I think this game is going to be a little closer than I initially thought. I know high-scoring games are kind of everybody's favorite thing to predict, but that's exactly what I was thinking heading into the Baylor game, and then it was low-scoring. So I'm going to err on the side of low-scoring here and say I have ASU capturing another home victory in a 28-24 win over the TCU Horned Frogs in a game that's close, but actually this is might be a bold prediction. Features 0 lead changes in the fourth quarter. I think ASU is always ahead by basically a score or two. TCU will cut it to a score, and then ASU will go back up by 2, and TCU will cut it and go back up. I don't think this game will change hands in the fourth quarter, though it probably will go back and forth in the first half.
So I think that this is a even more difficult matchup for ASU than Baylor, but the difference, of course, is a blackout environment. It's going to be a great home crowd. There's an advantage to be had in that for sure. TCU's a snapping cadence, clapping cadence, snapping team. I think that could be disrupted by crowd noise, especially when you get down there by the student section, the Inferno. I think ASU is going to win. Part of my reasoning is the kicking range of TCU's backup is not very good, and ASU is much better in the red zone, I think, than these other opponents that ASU's played against with its defense. Ultimately, the keys for ASU is to have balance, not have negative plays offensively, and to be able to win the turnover margin, most important stat in football. Obviously, I think ASU is poised to be able to do that. Going to have really good play. Whatever team has better cornerback play in this game, I think that is going to be hugely determinative. And Keith Abney's playing at an all-conference level. I look for him to have a great day against some very potent TCU wide receivers.
Yeah, Chris, I agree in terms of my key to the game. My key to the game that I wrote down was going to be ASU's defense not giving up the big plays. You know, Brian Ward is a guy who anytime we interview him, he's a little bit more soft-spoken, a little bit more reserved. He doesn't give out praise unless he truly believes it. And he was confident in calling Josh Hoover the best quarterback that ASU's seen in Big 12 conference play. So I believe him in terms of the difficulties that this ASU defense might have game planning against him. But if you give up those 1 to 2 or maybe 3 big shot plays like ASU did against Mississippi State, you can lose a game where you might have a home field advantage and you might outplay TCU. But if you give up those plays, you might not walk out of Mountain America Stadium with a win. So I think that's going to be the biggest key, is if a depleted ASU secondary without Xavier Alford can still contain those deep shots that TCU is going to try to dial up. I think that ASU will be able to do that, though. And I agree with Luke in the sense that sometimes you look at a game where everybody's talking about the offenses, but then you got to remember it's going to be a blackout environment that Kenny Dillingham has been talking about all week, how ASU needs that home crowd advantage. And everybody on our Devil's Sanctuary board and on our Sun Devil Source socials has been receiving what he has been saying in his availability, saying that they're going to be there and they're going to be loud. So I think it's going to be a big environment that can kind of just slow the pace of the game down entirely. So my prediction is it's going to be an ASU home victory, 23-20, where special teams and Jesus Gomez come up big once again, just like they did against Baylor. Well, that will do it for this Sun Devil Source podcast previewing TCU.
I forgot to give my score prediction.
Oh, your score. Yeah,
31. I don't know what I'm doing. 31-30 ASU. Close game.
Okay. All of us have a relatively close game. All of us have a game where ASU's winning score is going to be between that 23-33 type range. So similar for all three of us. Well, That'll do it, like I said, for this Sun Devil Source podcast episode previewing ASU's Friday night matchup against number 24 TCU. All three of us and the rest of our Sun Devil Source staff with Gabby Chernoff, Joaquin Rodriguez, and Jake Sloan will all be there at Mountain America Stadium for that Friday night 6 p.m. blackout game. We will have tons of coverage before, during, and after the game. If you see us at the game, be sure to say hello. That'll do it for us. From Jacob Brooks, Luke Lendler, and Chris Cartman, we're saying so long and hope you have a great rest of your day.